Hi guys, welcome back to the altcoin journey. In this particular video, we're going to go through some of the key mistakes that I've personally made in my crypto journey, understanding that many people may be in the same boat. Some of you have experienced the same mistakes I've made, some of you may not. But I think in order for us to grow and learn, especially in investing, we need to ensure that we learn from our mistakes. Here's the top 3 mistakes I've made in crypto. Mistake number 1, definitely for me, is not understanding sooner. I'm sure we've all had that moment, right? When you're looking at the current prices for one coin, you looked at it and thought, damn, I wish I knew sooner. You know, it was the same with me. For me, I first caught wind of Bitcoin in 2014. So it's still relatively late to the game. You know, Bitcoin was around about 5 years old then, but it was still very much a niche product for sure. So definitely late in the game in comparison to some other people. But this was during my university time. So I had studied computer science in uni, and I happened to stumble across a small advert while I was just online. A random small advert for like Bitcoin as a digital cash used to pay for items. Now, I can't remember explicitly what the advert was, but I just remember a green banner and a coin with a massive B in it. So I thought, okay, let me click on the link. It took me then to, I think it was like a Bitcoin live price clock, where it tracked like the Bitcoin price at the time. I thought to myself, this seems interesting, but then I looked at the price and it was around about £400 for a coin. And I thought to myself, what in the scam is this? You know, what is this piece of shit? I thought nothing more of it. In hindsight, this was just before the Mt. Gox security breach, which plunged the price down from 408 from what you see here to about 380 or something. So even if I did put that sweet uni money in at that point, it would have went down and I would have been in a crazy position. Now obviously, in the benefit of hindsight, it would have been a complete steal, you know, to take that sweet uni money and put it into a coin which obviously inflated in price afterwards. Naturally, though, at the time you don't really think about that, and obviously there was bills to pay, if you know what I mean. But that's how early I encountered it, when it was around about £408 per coin. Mistake number 2 for me definitely was the fear of missing out. So fast forward 3 years after 2014, when I first had exposure to Bitcoin, 2017 was the first real retail awareness, I would say, for Bitcoin. At the time, I had been dabbling into trading here and there, and I specifically had an app which also tracked crypto prices. So I remember studying, I think it was final year of uni or something like that, and I received 4 or 5 notifications basically telling me that Bitcoin was approaching $1,000, subsequently hitting $1,000, and then smashing past $1,100 in like a quick succession. I couldn't believe it at that point in time, because it was something which I then thought to myself, I remember this a few years ago, you know, but still didn't think nothing of it. Didn't buy at that point, and it was complete oversight on my part, because I thought, again, wasn't really interested. Also, I wasn't really acutely aware of like the massive bull run in 2017 that was actually taking place, until a friend actually came up to me and said he invested early into Ripple's XRP, which brought the whole crypto sphere like extremely close to home. Back then I didn't really know anyone that was really dabbling in crypto at all. It was only when he came to me and said, you know, I just made 20k from this coin, I thought to myself, wow, what is this? Is this the time? Back then, the crypto exchanges weren't really as advanced as they are now. I remember key apps like Bittrex and Bitfinex, they received such an influx of crypto enthusiasts or people wanting to sign up in accounts that they suspended their new account opening, which meant that for me personally, I didn't even have access to the same opportunities that my mate did. So at this time, you know, peak FOMO setting, I thought, wow, I'm going to miss this train. I don't even know what I'm going to do. Looking at the price, buying a whole Bitcoin around the time was around about £3,000 or $5,000. So I thought, no, I won't be able to afford that. So the next best thing was Ethereum, right? So looking at the prices and having a lack of awareness, I thought to myself, wow, Ethereum is £500 a coin, Bitcoin is £5,000 a coin. Ethereum can surely then match up or overtake Bitcoin at some point. So I thought like the numbers would have been the same, not having no idea about market caps or even use cases for Bitcoin versus Ethereum at the time. So me being the degen that I was at the time, opened up a Coinbase account and went into Ethereum all the money I could. I think it was around like £500-600 at the time to buy one whole Ethereum coin. So I generally thought at that time, if Bitcoin could reach $20,000, then so could Ethereum. You know, stupidly looking at the price, comparing the two. So some days when I went ahead, constantly checking the prices. I think I bought in around about £580 per Ethereum coin. I then watched the price rise up to about 900 in about 2 to 3 weeks. And I thought, wow, I'm definitely on this rocket ship. You know, nothing's going to stop from here, right? And then just like that, the bear market kicked in of 2018 and everything just plunged. You know, Bitcoin went from like $20,000 all the way down to like 3,000. Ethereum went to like from £900 all the way down to 280. And, you know, I sold on the way down. You know, typical buy high, sell low type of mentality, unfortunately. I'd say mistake number 3 definitely was NFTs and airdrops. Now, where do I begin with this one? You know, 2017 was the era of initial coin offerings or ICOs. You know, different tokens were being dropped almost every day. You know, a new particular use case for a coin, huge influx of fiat money, and then the coin would just vanish, you know. But 2021, in my opinion, was the second huge wave of crypto interest. You know, the majority of retail investors kind of fell asleep, you know, between 2017-18 and 2021. This is when companies, institutional investors specifically, like Tesla, MicroStrategy, slowly started accumulating Bitcoin under the hood. Crypto companies themselves started building use cases, you know, actual tangibility for their coins and their businesses. So it was kind of like a perfect storm. So after COVID, for example, and another wave of money printing, most of the world was interested in like risk on assets. You saw like a massive dump from COVID because of the uncertainty, but then a huge rise after that. You know, I remember Zoom, the stock taking off, gold also took off. Companies like Apple and remote working, you know, really took off, and the stocks rose because of that. You know, this risk on appetite coincided with the introduction of NFTs as a digital asset. You know, some of these tokens reached insane values, you know, with the likes of Justin Bieber, Steph Curry, and even Snoop Dogg like buying into Bored Apes, these ones on the top left here. So with this craze in full swing, a lot of people, me included, misunderstood the real use case of NFTs in general. So now this technology works really well in formats like event tickets or proof of attendance protocols, you know, where you can verify you've attended somewhere, so you get like a digital token to prove that ownership, or tickets where, you know, it's not easily forged. But buying an NFT in the hope that it goes up in value because someone else would buy it at a higher price without any real utility doesn't make sense. You know, the token represents ownership via like hashed metadata on the blockchain. So essentially what owning an NFT means is the key pair that the token has is generated and connected to your wallet. So the image, the video, or the music, or whatever digitized item is not even attached to that NFT. It's just literally metadata, if that makes sense. So this is why you can get people just right-clicking your NFT and just saving the image. You know, it's very easy to copy, and the non-fungibility of it is only the actual metadata on the blockchain, which a lot of people didn't understand. I might add though that several NFTs still hold tremendous value, and definitely there are some thriving communities out there, you know, that have brought people together, and they will hold some utility now, I might add. But overall, 95% of NFTs are just completely worthless, and it was literally a lottery down to which NFTs would make it or not. So, as you know, aped into a couple of these, lost a ton of money, ton of opportunity, and yeah, that was one bad one. So, fast forward again now into the realm of airdrop farming. So, airdrop farming was an idea where people, or layer 2 protocols on like Ethereum or Solana, you know, they incentivized new users to utilize their network, you know, and in return, when they have a token event, for example, they would distribute free tokens to people that utilize their network or help build network usability, if that makes sense. So airdrop farming is a bit like that, when people actively use new protocols like bridges or decentralized exchanges. So the hope of airdrop farming is getting a reward for that use case, if that makes sense. So think of it much like loyalty points. So you can interact with a platform early, and they might reward you later when they launch their token, or if they launch their token. So this could mean like making swaps, like providing liquidity to the platform, bridging assets from different chains to the platform, or just minting NFTs, you know, all in the hopes of getting in like a snapshot list from their criteria. So when it's done right, you know, airdrop farming can be quite profitable. You know, early adopters on chains like you see here, Arbitrum, Optimism, and even Uniswap like receive thousands of dollars just for participation, sometimes with just a few clicks a day. So for me, I got into this game in around about late 2022, 2023. One of the biggest flaws of the whole space is, you know, there's definitely no guarantee of a project launching a token. So you can spend time and transaction fees interacting with a project, and they might even never launch, you know. The time taken, you know, is lost. The transaction fees are all eaten up by the project. So I was farming on Ethereum at the time, and obviously the gas fees on Ethereum can vary, you know, so they stack up quite fast. And sometimes what I found was the amount I was engaging with these layer 2 platforms, sometimes the transaction fees that I racked up across the board were higher than the airdrop amount. So you're definitely in a loss position, you know. Nowadays, many of the airdrops are no longer lucrative. Many of the farmers now use bots or massive distributions, you know, to get more significant utilization. I must say though that some projects are actually, you know, battening down on this, and the criteria sometimes is quite strict on who will be eligible for airdrops, which is also another double-edged sword, because if you're a legitimate utilizer of the platform, you could be hurt if you're using multiple wallets at the same time to try and increase your chances of getting an airdrop, you know. So you have to really be genuinely using the platform and not gaming it to actually receive a reward, and the reward can be quite low as well. Finally, one of the biggest mistakes here is the actual opportunity cost in the farming. You know, at the same time of utilizing small amounts to transact on these layer 2 platforms, I could have just been holding Bitcoin or Ethereum, you know. Many a times the effort of actually using this doesn't always beat just buying and holding Ethereum or Bitcoin and just riding the wave there, you know, because in this case, sometimes there isn't no free money in crypto, and there always is a hidden cost. Overall, some of the lessons learned, I would say, first of all, just be open to new ideas. You know, if I was open or receptive to understanding what Bitcoin meant in 2014, you know, not having to buy something immediately then, but at least committing to learning and understanding what it was about, who knows, I might have been in a different position. But with the being open to new ideas, also be cautious. You know, there's a lot of scams and people targeting in the crypto space, as there is in life, but more so in the crypto space because there's a lot of anonymity. So with the idea of being receptive, you know, be very cautious. Always double check, you know, do your homework and research on particular coins, tokens or projects. Also acknowledge that there is a hierarchy of risk even in the crypto space, which is considered highly risk on anyway. Bitcoin would be the least risky of all of the crypto assets. But then the further down you go, you know, to layer 2s, then you go into layer 2s and you talk about NFTs or airdrop farming and stuff like that, the riskier it gets. So just have an acknowledgement that you could literally lose everything in a greater degree than if you were just to hold Bitcoin or Ethereum, which are more safer assets within the crypto space, if that makes sense. Lesson learned number 2, definitely when peak FOMO hits, do nothing. You know, it's better to do nothing than to buy at the wrong time. As I've personally witnessed, buying Ethereum at the top of the 2017 bull market, I would have had to wait maybe 2 or 3 years to see that same exit, you know. So just ensure that you hold on to your capital to wait for the right time, and also be patient and have a strategy before you're going in. Prices will always come down to meet lower demand, you know, but when demand is high, you have to be fearful when others are greedy, and vice versa. If you just remain consistent and ignore the hype, you'll most likely be a winner over the long term. You know, as with any investing, timing the market is never as good as time in the market. So just make sure that you have a consistent strategy to ensure that you are ignoring the hype. You know, the worst thing is to listen to outside noise, which could sway you on your decision making, and most of all, becoming emotional. You know, we have to be rational and logical in this game. We know that, for example, in my case, Bitcoin, there will only ever be 21 million in existence, and scarcity does matter. You know, for example, that the demand will always be coming in future, whereas the supply is fixed. So having that logical mindset, ensuring that, you know, if you just remain consistent, you'll surely win over the long term. With that being said, one of the biggest things that I would say I've learned to implement is DCA, or dollar cost averaging. It's the most surefire and efficient way to ensure that, you know, different market shocks don't impact what you're doing. You know, for example, on a monthly basis, your 100, 200 or 300 pounds is going towards that particular asset, and whatever price is set, you know, is the amount of satoshis that you end up getting over time. With the market being the roller coaster that it is, sometimes you get more sats, sometimes you get less, but overall it would work out into a consistent average pain anyway. You know, so focusing on dollar cost averaging in any particular crypto asset would be the best way to go. For me, the final one here is the focus on Bitcoin. You know, as I just mentioned, it's finite and it's scarce. Plus, it's also the number one crypto asset out there. You know, so the winner takes most in this scenario. Here, knowing that it's an actual store of value over time because of its scarcity is the main reason why I'll continue to focus on Bitcoin. While all other crypto assets might have their particular use cases, for example Ethereum or Solana being predominantly smart contract based, which does have its uses, these aren't inherently as valuable as a store of value with a finite supply. So my focus will very much be on Bitcoin moving forward and throughout my crypto investing journey. And that is it. You know, thank you guys for watching the whole video. Hopefully you guys learned some of my lessons before doing the mistakes. Let me know what you think. Note down in the comment section any mistakes that you've made and how you've learned from them. And hopefully we can continue to invest successfully. I'll see you guys in the next one.